Muses of Mythology is a spoiler-heavy podcast.
That's an understatement.
We're going to discuss not just the events of this book, but the Riordan as a whole, and really anything that we feel is relevant. You can find full spoiler warnings in the show notes.
Damn, I bet those desert storms are crazy. Who's the desert god? Did we get the desert god or the storm god?
Yeah, it's set.
He's a sandstorm god, but I want like the thunderstorm god. That's
Thor.
Well, the Egyptian Darien. Who the fuck? What do you?
Welcome to Muses of Mythology, a podcast where we explore how ancient myths become part of modern pop culture through the lens of Riordan's The King Chronicles. This is Story 106, Order and Chaos. I'm your co-host and podcasting muse, Darien Smartt. Joining me is my co-host and brother, DJ.
How's everybody doing today? I'm DJ the Muse, and fantasy life has absorbed me. It is a second-time job. I have 160 hours in it.
Wow.
I got this at the end of May. It is brutal.
160, you say?
It's 40 hours a week.
That is a full-time job.
Yeah, it's my second job, and I don't get anything for it. I just like playing it.
Well, I'm glad. That's high praise. We should maybe have a serious discussion about it, but first we're going to muse around the garden. Okay, DJ.
What's up?
This episode was a little late, and I'm really sorry about that, gang.
Yeah.
It's just...
Shit happens.
cards on the table. I hit a wall trying to research for the episode that this episode was originally going to be, and I got overwhelmed, so DJ and I had to sit down and be like, what are we going to do? And DJ's like, let's just do Order and Chaos. And I'm like, that's a good idea.
Yeah, let's just start with the overarching theme like we did in the last one.
Yeah, that's a big, important theme. Order and Chaos. So that's what this episode is. It is Order and Chaos, and what we understand those to mean conceptually to ancient Egyptian cultures through the kingdoms. DJ.
Does it mean anything, Darien?
It does.
Oh, good.
Yes. Yes, good news.
Sometimes going into these episodes, you're just like, does it though?
Yeah, it's like, I think this is made up. This one's not. This one is in fact a very real and present, and not just in like this is a reoccurring motif and narrative, but the concept of order over chaos is fundamental or was fundamental to
ancient Egypt.
The ancient Egypt, just like in the general sense of like to Egypt as a cultural norm. The almost like as a level of etiquette. Is how these were. Before we jump into that, though, DJ, what do you think chaos and order means? And please feel free to be as out of pocket as you want.
Honestly, it really is just like structure versus unstructured, probably.
Interesting. Okay.
Just something akin to that. Having like a society that like, orders everything neatly, properly, and trying to avoid the clutter of chaos, so to speak.
Okay, yeah, I can see that. Do you want to elaborate on it in the concept of the King Chronicles and kind of like where we're seeing that? I mean, it's brought up all the fucking time.
Yeah, it's truly, it seems like it's more along the lines of the good gods versus the bad gods.
Right, yeah, that's literally what I was, in this moment, I just feel like it's just like a stand-in for good v evil.
And the only like separate we get is like Set.
Yeah, it's like when the vulture Nekabet and Bobby go after Sadie Kane, and they're like, but you're supposed to be good gods, and they're like, there is no good and evil, there's only like strength and weakness, order and
really
chaos.
Is there is good and evil, and it's order and chaos is the good and evil.
Yeah, and it really what it is, it just became a stand-in for like, whose side are you on?
It's like the gods themselves might play with it, but that's because they didn't want Ra back.
Yeah.
That's why they were going after them. But the moment Ra was back, the order gods just left them alone. Yeah.
Yeah,
they ordered up real quick.
Yeah, they did. They didn't want him back because like, oh, he's weak. But when he rolled up and was like really not in a space to be in charge of anything, everyone got in line. Everyone was on that boat doing the nightly trips. Like,
we gotta. Because it's the thing we gotta do.
We gotta order up.
Yeah.
Because that's super interesting. We didn't really unpack that, how once Ra is back there, and maybe it's because like Horus and Isis both were like, we believe in Carter and Sadie. Whoa, everyone better
Yeah,
fucking...
we're gonna trust them.
We're gonna
'cause
trust them, so you're gonna listen to us. Like, if they
Yeah.
didn't have Isis and Horus backing them, would Ra have been able to stay in power like that? Or
no idea.
right? Like, that would have been so much, because it's in the Greek books we get references to like lesser gods and like other like titans siding with the titans. And
Giannis showing up out of nowhere when he's a Roman god.
Man, was that when the first time I was like, Rick, what the fuck? And I think yes.
Maybe, I don't know. That was the first time that when I recognized that Giannis was a Roman god, I'm like, why is he here, dude? This isn't...
I don't know, and it doesn't make any sense, and it's so weird, but we can't go back to that. We're here. We're in... That was so long ago, DJ.
Yeah, anyway.
DJ, we've been through a whole other pantheon
anyway.
since then. But yeah, it is... The idea of order and chaos, as we've discussed a couple times, doesn't feel like it's like successfully unpacked in a way, and it does kind of just feel like a stand-in for good versus evil.
Yeah.
And never fully acknowledge that the Cades are like straight up
being chaos now.
But at the same time, they're like, Sadie does have that line towards the end where she's like, I have to embrace my own chaos. And I'm like, that's a great theme. Where has that been these last two books,
literally, dude? Like, I pointed out, and it still baffles me that he didn't try to like nail it down a little harder as to the fact that the Canes truly were now uprooting the order that's sit for thousands of years at this point, right? So they're just like, they show up and now they're uprooting it all, and that's chaos.
But
they're
the
destroying
idea is like,
the
we're
order.
going back to the old ways, thus it's order.
But it's not.
So it's not. And it's just so perplexing that wasn't examined. And again, it's like, well, you can read the subtext. It's a middle grade book.
Yeah.
You could just spell it out sometimes. If it doesn't spell it out in the middle grade book, I'm not sure it was intentional.
I think, for middle grade, and it's never acknowledged.
Yeah.
It's never even thought in like a passing thought of like, are we being a little chaotic here? Something like that. Or
what we have are like enemies of the Cain family accusing them of aligning themselves with chaos, right?
Yeah, but it's like...
But that's just them saying you're the villains here.
Yeah,
and
they're like, you're aligning
really
with Apophis, essentially. Not just you're aligning with chaos. You're not being chaotic. You're not being chaos.
Yeah.
You're aligning with Apophis.
Yeah. And they're like, not. But it's like, I do wish we got a little bit more exploration into the idea of... But again, like the idea of like order isn't always right, chaos isn't always evil.
Yeah.
Is not an Egyptian concept.
No, it's not.
And so it could potentially be Rick Riordan doesn't play with it because
it's not.
He's trying to adhere to these cultural ideas in the same way that
I
Apollo doesn't leave Olympus.
I think it's because it's a middle grade book and he doesn't want to play with those kinds of nuances.
Well,
sometimes.
Maybe not then. Maybe he would now.
Maybe. I think he would now.
Yeah.
But then for sure not.
Hey, real quick.
Because we got to remember, this is also when Lost Hero and those first three ones coming out. Lost Hero, Son of Neptune, and Mark.
He's doing a lot. Maybe he wanted to, but just didn't have the bandwidth. So let's talk about order and chaos as we have been able to, as archaeologists have been able to kind of parse
understand as far as they can.
Listen, y'all know we did 2 episodes about it. Moving on.
Yep.
I want to shout out a book that was a huge reference to this episode's research. It was... by James P. Allen, Middle Egyptian, An Introduction to the Language and Culture of Hieroglyphics. And you're like, that's an insane thing to find a bunch about order and chaos in.
I mean, I imagine that falls hella into their just hieroglyphic, the way they wrote.
It's just mentioned a lot. So, order, this idea, in ancient Egyptian, this term is Ma'at, right? Should I describe what hieroglyphs look like? No.
Everybody knows what a hieroglyph looks like.
Well, no. I meant like specifically.
Oh, no. Okay. That is, it'd make for funny audio, but that would be such a pain for every single hieroglyph we're about to speak.
Just that would be kind of funny though.
Bonus episode. We'll be like, okay, we're going to describe some of these.
Oh my gosh, what if at the end I'm like going to describe a hieroglyphic to you and you have to guess what hieroglyphic is it? Hey, would y'all like to listen to that? Would that be funny? Tell us if you want to hear that. I'm going to leave this in the episode so y'all can let us know if it's worth us doing. Okay, so Ma'at is this concept that we are roughly translating as order. But to quote Alan here, The concept of Ma'at refers to the natural order of the universe, something like the notion of natural law in Western philosophy. So it's not just order as in things are
orderly,
organized.
It's quite literally the function of the universe to be in order.
It is essentially, you could kind of more accurately translate it to mean the way things ought to be.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's not just the way things are. It's not like just a goal to be attained, but this concept of Ma'at was like literally the natural state of things.
Yeah.
This is what it is meant to be at a fundamental level. It is apparently, it's nearly impossible to translate into one word. So that's why we often see Ma'at. And I'm saying it because I got two A's. Sometimes there's an apostrophe. I don't know. So, big picture, because the Ma'at exists in two ways when we're talking about it. And so I'm going to start with just the big cosmic picture of Ma'at. And it is an element of nature, right?
Yeah. Like the sun goes up, goes down.
Yes, exactly.
The moon's constantly there.
The moon is turning.
Yeah.
It is gravity. It's the changing of the seasons. It's the cycle of night and day.
This is just the laws of physics, baby.
Yep. It is both the fertile riverbanks of the Nile and the endless, deadly desert that surrounds it. It is one generation of humanity being replaced by the next. Like, it is not permanence.
Yeah.
It is not. It is change is as much Ma'at as something remaining as is.
Mm-hmm.
As long as that remaining as is part of the way things ought to be.
Yeah.
Right?
The seasons.
The seasons.
The
cycle
seasons
and turn,
are
wind and the river
fall into
floods
Ma'at.
and comes back and things like that. It's an ideal order that's not necessarily about replacing everything undesirable, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's not about replacing that desert with only fertile.
The desert's supposed to be a desert.
The desert is supposed to be the desert, right? It's not about replacing the bad things with the pleasant things.
And if like a natural thing comes along to change the desert, like the river starts carving another path, then that's the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah. It's just about balancing the things that we find pleasant and unpleasant.
Yeah.
It's not the absence of a storm, right? But it's the reality that this storm is going to pass, the sun's going to come back out, the land will dry, and another storm will come, because that is just the way things happen. Now, let's go back to now we zero into the societal level on Ma'at as a human experience. It's also essentially I described it as etiquette, essentially.
Yeah.
Because it's like the everyday baseline expectation of human interaction in ancient Egyptian.
Yeah. Just the common courtesy.
Beyond, common courtesy, but beyond that almost. We have never found a formal code of Egyptian law.
Okay.
Right? Friend Dalton works for the state, and I have visited his office, and I have seen the entirety of the Idaho state law.
Yeah.
It's fucking crazy, gang.
Yeah.
So this whole place is being held together with duct tape and paperclips.
We all are, yeah.
But that idea of here's all the laws of the land, and every single thing is... We've never found anything like that. And that's not necessarily to mean that such a detailed thing didn't exist, but just we never found it. That isn't...
No, it was actually in the center of town, and the reason we can't find it is because it was so central that sand just rushed eroded through it.
This isn't to say that ancient Egyptians didn't have formalities on this bureaucratic level. Pharaohs were often they were referred to essentially as lawmakers. Mm-hmm. And there have been legal judgments regarding civic matters, right? And this, we found these archaeological evidences. And this is actually how we know the legal status of ancient Egyptian women was exactly the same as that of men.
Nice.
Whether they were married, unmarried, divorced, whatever, they were on the same level. They could own property, inherit land, bring matters to court.
Hey, wonderful. That's awesome.
Now, of course, that does not necessarily mean that there weren't
different treatments? Sometimes?
Yeah, different gendered expectations. A man's status came from his position in society, and a woman's status would come from her husband's position in society.
But if she had that status, she could wield it just as much.
Exactly. In her article, Women's Legal Rights in Ancient Egypt, published by the University of Chicago, Janet A. Johnson stated that, quote, in the legal arena, both men and women could act on their own and were responsible for their own actions. And I cite all of this because the idea of being responsible for one's own actions, I feel, really demonstrates the place Mott had as an underlying influence on Egyptian life and behavior. Going back to Allen, it was, quote, a practical experience, behaviors that promoted balance, harmonious relationships between people. It's intrinsically linked with the laws of the land. Basically, one determining if something is permissible or not, you would ask, is this promoting balance? Is it promoting harmony? Right? Is it promoting needless strife?
Would I like it if somebody did that to me?
Kind of, yeah. Yeah. From the 5th dynasty onwards, the vizier responsible for justice was called the priest of Mott. And later period judges wore images of Mott.
Nice.
Which symbolizes that this concept of Mott was intrinsically linked to the law and what I want, like the structural ruling and day-to-day practical experience of ancient Egyptians. It's that baseline expectation that one should behave ethically, morally, and honestly in all aspects of their life. Alan, again, as I said, this book had really helped me really nail down these concepts. The essence of Mott and the human spirit was not a perfect social and economic equality, but rather a harmonious coexistence of the society's different levels. So basically, Mott didn't mean, eliminate everything, everybody is equal, but rather, Mott meant that the rich and powerful should use their advantages not to exploit the less fortunate, but rather to help them. The biographical inscriptions of officials often echo this understanding in sentences such as, I have given bread to the hungry and clothing to the naked, and I was a husband to the widow and a father to the orphan. Anyways, if you're wondering, how did this thing about the hieroglyphics end up in this episode about Mott? Well, because if you go on the Wikipedia page, it says that about Mott. Inscriptions say this thing. And if you're like, where did it say this thing? You end up at this dude's book, and you're like, what?
Damn, okay. What?
Great. And I actually found an e-copy of this book that I was able to reference. And since because like I wanted to know, but where are these inscriptions? But what do you mean specifically? Like what?
You want to see the other sources.
Exactly. But so this seems more like these phrases were a common occurrence. You would see for people to demonstrate basically on their
I'm a good person.
I'm a good person. Yeah. But if someone were to write their own eulogy, basically, they're wanting to demonstrate this is how they adhered to Mott, is that they took care of those who did not have the same means as themselves.
Yeah.
And that was viewed as right and good. And which it is. The way I phrased that almost was like that, but it's not, and that's a crazy thing to think.
But it is.
But it is. It is. And I think we could say that also makes sense. You should be moral and ethical and honest, and try to not create needless strife.
Yeah.
So overall, Mott is a very abstract concept that you can actually translate it into a variety of English ideas. Obviously, order is the one we see most frequently, but I think you could also use right, correct behavior, justice, and truth. So let's talk a little bit about chaos. DJ, what comes to mind when I say chaos?
If we're going off of what we've just talked about, I'm going to go ahead and say a lot of man-made interference and just being destructive to the environment around you, whether that be physically, verbally, not a good person.
Right on the money. So Allen in his book cites a Middle Kingdom text that goes as followed. It said Middle Kingdom at the top. I think all of these texts are from the Middle Kingdom. I made every man like his fellow. I do not command that they do isfet. It is their minds that destroy what I have made. So, if Mott calls for all things to have balance, is a duality between opposing forces. And that concept of duality is also a big thing for ancient Egyptians in motif and storytelling and culture. So, of course, Mott needs to have some sort of balance and opposing force. And this is that term I just used, isfet. It is not a natural force like Mott is. Mott is like I said, it is viewed as natural. The way things ought to be is Mott.
Yeah.
Isfet is the result of human thought and action. As you said, DJ, human destruction.
Yeah.
Like it is man-made. So
Yeah, so if instead of the river diverting naturally, the guys built a nice irrigation canal, that would be...
Well, potentially. Let's say they're building the irrigation canal to better feed the people, to appease the gods, to grow more crops. Having more crops so everybody has enough to eat and the kingdom is prosperous would be viewed as the way things ought to be. Let's do the flip side of that, and let's say there's a drought because there wasn't a lot of rain because it's still a desert.
Yeah.
And now there's a drought, and that drought resulted in a famine. That could be viewed as natural because it's a drought and we don't have like ways to make it rain.
But if there's a drought because they dammed the river.
They dammed the river. Or perhaps because you believe it's the pharaoh's job to appease the gods.
Yeah.
So another big part of Mott is that it was the pharaoh's job to retain Mott for all of society, right? So while everyone was expected to maintain Mott in their individual lives and interactions, the pharaoh's responsibility is to keep it for all of the kingdom.
That's an awful lot of responsibility.
To Alan again, it was the king's duty to keep Egypt's enemies at bay so the country could live in order and tranquility, to appoint just officials who would keep society running smoothly and in harmony, to settle disputes between nomes, towns, and people, to manage the national grain supply so that people would not go hungry between harvests, and to appease the gods with temples and offerings, so the forces of nature would continue to look kindly on the Egyptians. All of these actions, and others like them, were seen as part of the king's duty to his subjects and the gods. So meaning chaos that would result from a natural disaster would be seen as unnatural because of the underlying beliefs of the Egyptian people.
Yeah.
The idea that everything is controlled by the gods. And if there is a natural order that things ought to be in order, if things are not, then it is because the gods who control all the things must be displeased, probably because the pharaoh has failed to appease the gods and not maintained Mott. So this is why I think we see storm magic being viewed as chaotic. So that example I used earlier about a storm not necessarily being chaotic or out of order because it'll pass, the idea of a terrible storm that damages a city and floods and people are killed, that could potentially be seen as Isfet if one were to blame the pharaoh for not doing his job in appeasing gods and thus making the choice to abandon Mott.
Yeah.
Essentially. Another thing I wanted to, so when we call it like order and chaos.
Damn, you know there was definitely something equivalent to thanks Obama. 100%.
Thanks, Ramses.
Yeah, literally. Thanks, Cleopatra.
Probably a lot of things. Well, since then there's been a lot of thanks, Cleopatra.
There's been a lot of that, yeah.
Thanks, Tutmos. So I want to say, like, we talk about chaos. And
thanks, Amun-Ra.
Thanks, Amun-Ra. Okay, Isfet is not the same as primordial chaos, right? We might translate Isfet as disorder, but we could also call it wrong or incorrect, antisocial, injustice, or falsehood, right? It's like you said, it is human action.
Yeah. It
is choices and decisions that are made to cause disharmony, to break down the way things ought to be. Essentially, the danger of Isfet is that it erodes civilization, pushing it back towards the primordial chaos of pre-creation. Fortunately, we have Mott, which is this natural force of the universe that keeps that from happening.
Yeah.
So basically, and this is another important thing to underline, while the ancient Egyptians believed in the duality of Mott and Isfet, that both must exist,
they try to lessen Isfet as much as possible.
Exactly. That didn't mean they got equal screen time.
It means that doesn't mean that we liked Isfet, okay?
This isn't Mickey Mouse and Bugs Bunny and Who Framed Roger Rabbit, okay? One is clearly favored. One is clearly assumed to be more prevalent than the other. And specifically, if it's the natural force of the universe is Mott, then the natural force is for Mott to triumph over Isfet, because this is the way things ought to be.
Yeah.
And the idea that you could control this descent into disorder and chaos by choosing to adhere to the expectations of Mott, that is why the idea is like, well, Mott will always triumph over chaos because it's a choice.
Yeah.
It's a choice to choose chaos, and therefore we can choose Mott. All right, DJ, do you want to talk about Mott the goddess?
Sure.
So this obviously, listen, a lot of concepts had personifications in ancient Egyptian.
Yes.
A lot of like ancient and pagan religions around the world.
Yes.
You get a kind of personification of a thing, and that is the deity. So we've got Mott, who, when personified as a deity, is often a young woman with wings on her arms, or an ostrich feather on her head, or both.
Okay.
And this personification of Mott came about as early as the Old Kingdom.
Nice.
So in like really
Yeah.
beginnings of Egyptian civilization.
So who do we want this overarching order goddess to be? Or order god to be? What about like a hot fury?
The problem
Or a
with
harpy.
that,
Harpy, that's the term.
well, the problem with that is definitely predates the harpy.
Well, yeah, but you know.
It's more just like, harpy. I saw this really cool thing in
I've
Egypt.
just seen, the reason I got that confused is because, what is it? In a lot of things, I've seen like furies or harpies be called furies in like games and stuff like that.
Yeah.
They
it's
get
like they
intertwined a couple times.
They do. That's a thing. That's a thing we didn't explore. But yeah, you'll often have harpies and furies suddenly just be like called the same thing, even though they're fundamentally not. Getting into some lore of this goddess figure. Egypt had several different creation myths, and this episode was almost a creation myth episode. It was almost like, in the beginning. Order and chaos is a better approach.
But then you stumbled upon like 6 different creation myths, and you're like, I don't know about that one.
Well, yeah. So this is our crash. So consider this next segment to be our crash course in Egyptian creation myths for our season.
Yes,
They had several different ones.
we'll probably touch on them a couple times.
Probably here or there if they come up, and different like capitals of Egypt would have, or different like areas, nomes would kind of have ones that were more prevalent than others, but they almost all featured a couple common elements, specifically Nu, spelt N-U, this primordial, lifeless waters of chaos.
Okay.
Before there was anything, there was Nu.
Mm-hmm.
And the very first thing that arose from these waters is a pyramid-shaped mound called the Bennen. Bennen, yeah.
Okay.
And so I didn't find a place to put this when we were talking about pyramids in the last couple episodes, but one theory as to why the pyramids are
Look like
that
is because of Bennen?
Because of this idea of like this triangle-shaped mound is like, listen, when you pile up dirt,
It does that.
it does that naturally.
Okay, it just does that.
And you just like, wow, this is
You
the
pile
first
up
thing.
sand, it does that. Okay,
Yeah. And this is the first thing that ever existed from or if you're looking out there at a sandbank.
it does that.
It does
just
that.
looks. It
And so
just
you're going
looks
to
like
recreate
that.
that in stone because it represents
Mountains
the beginning of all
fucking do
things.
that. Okay, they
Mountains
just do that.
Do that. So, and so from the Benin, the first thing to arise was the sun, Ra, who, depending on the story, either first appeared as a lotus flower that grew from the mound, in the form of a heron, a falcon, a scarab beetle, or a human child.
Okay.
Now, Mott is often called Sun's daughter because she, like most of the natural elements, were established when Ra arose from Nu.
Yeah.
And so Ra puts Mott in place of Esfet, so the world would not fall into primordial chaos again. Beyond...
It is really interesting that like Ra and the sun god is so prominent in Egypt, and then you look at like other ones, and it's not nearly as much. Like Sol's not nearly as prominent in Norse mythology. Apollo, while yeah, he's big, but he's not fucking Ra.
Yeah.
But it's like the sun is important, is incredibly powerful. Why don't they serve more of a purpose in other ones? I don't know.
Interesting. Maybe it's because desert?
That's the only thing I can assume.
Like if we had more cultural beliefs preserved from other nations in Africa and other like desert regions, would we see more of the sun as this main player?
Yeah. Now, again, Smite knowledge. My understanding of like even like Yoruba, they're all like they're big guy. They're big god. My understanding, because he's in Smite. His name is Oleron. He's very cool, big fan. But he's like the big god, and he's not a sun god as far as my understanding.
What's his deal?
He's the guy. He's him.
He's just the guy?
He is him.
He's not specifically
he's like Odin, Allfather, Zeus, god of gods, kind of
Cool.
him. That's him. But as far as I'm aware, I don't remember him being involved with the sun. But I could be wrong about that because I know nothing else about Yoruba. I know, Oleron and Yamoja, and that's it.
That's all. Moving on. Yeah, that is interesting. But it's like, there are sun deities, but yet rarely are they like the big head honcho.
Rarely are they him, dude.
And well, I wonder if it's also because like rarely is the sun the first thing that exists. There's something else that creates the sun. And for Egyptian cultural belief is that the sun was the first. Mm-hmm. And the rising of the sun and the sun returning every day. Maybe it's this idea of Ma'at, this thing that is always reliable is the sun will come back out tomorrow.
Like we know that is even the topography of our land changes because it's shifting sands.
It's shifting, the sand shifts, the river floods and changes.
Constantly comes up. It's the thing that it does its job. Even the moon disappears sometimes.
Yeah. The moon isn't a necessary constant. But the sun is, and so it's.
No, they didn't understand why the moon disappeared. So.
Yeah. Oh, why? Yeah, why?
They got real fucking scared during solar eclipse. I gotta imagine, bro.
Listen, I get real fucking scared during solar eclipse.
Awesome, I love it.
It's crazy. Really cool though. Very cool though.
Fun.
If you've never seen a solar eclipse in like real life, life changing.
If it's within like 30, 40 miles, you go check it out.
Go check it out. Some people travel the world and see everyone.
Yeah, that's crazy.
That's a lot, but
that's retirement shit. I don't know if I'll get to that.
It's a good retirement, Harvey, traveling the world. Yeah. So so it's probably why the sun god is so much bigger is because it is in this one the concept of this is the first thing to ever exist. Yeah. So it is going to be our head guy.
Yeah.
There aren't very many stories of Ma'at that we have that is like her as a figure doing stuff.
Yeah.
One main thing about her. Do you remember that aforementioned ostrich feather?
Yes.
Hey, what do you think that feather is also called?
Darren, I don't know.
It's called the feather of truth.
Okay.
And this is the feather that is weighed against the heart of the dead as they journey into the afterlife.
Nice.
More on that in another episode. But it is literally a feather from Ma'at. The order of how things ought to be is how you're judged. Essentially, it's like, hey, did you live a harmonious, balanced, truthful life? Well, the goddess of the way things ought to be donated a feather from her headpiece, and she's going to tell us. What are you looking up?
We're an Egyptian now, so I figured I'd go back to some real old roots. So I decided to look up...
What is happening right now? Listeners, I'm not prepared.
I decided to look up Ma'at Yu-Gi-Oh card.
Oh, God. What? Yes. Oh, my God. Yes. DJ, will you be in charge of bringing Yu-Gi-Oh to the table every episode?
Yes. Dude, you brought up Feather of Truth, and I thought of like a scene from Yu-Gi-Oh Season 0 of like Yugi fucking weighing a guy's heart. And the guy...
Season 0 is unhinged.
It's crazy. And he's he brings it out, and then the guy's like... He's a scumbag, right? So he's like compulsively lying. And then in his mind, he's like, why the fuck am I doing that? I should tell the truth because it's feather. But he just keeps compulsively lying because that's who he is. Mm-hmm. So it just like obviously heavier and heavier and heavier. And he's like, well, you're fucked, brother. And he sends him to the underworld. Like, dude, season 0 is crazy.
Season 0 is crazy. Ugh, that's so funny. I thought you were just going to tell me about a card, but no, here's season 0 of Yu-Gi-Oh!
So that's what Ma'at looks like. They chose a dude here. Chose a fella, it looks like.
Rude, but okay.
Very light magician.
It does look like dark magician, but just light magician. Yep.
Let's get that description. Oh, that's right. These descriptions are actually just it's a light. These descriptions, fairy effects.
Ha-ha!
Yeah, the descriptions are just what they do.
What do they do?
Cannot be normal summons or set summons. Must be special summoned from your hand by sending one light dragon type and one light fairy monster you control to the graveyard.
Oh, God.
And cannot be special summoned by other ways. Once per turn, you can declare 3 card names, excavate the top 3 cards of your deck, add any of them that you named to your hand, and send the remaining cards to the graveyard. This card's attack and defense each become equal to the number of cards you added to your effect by 1,000. Jeez. Okay.
There's no way this card is still legal in like tournament play.
It definitely is.
I don't believe it. I think
because you have to you have to guess the next 3 cards in your deck. Yeah, it's absolutely legal.
Okay, so, hey, anyone playing Yu-Gi-Oh? Tell us.
It's absolutely legal. Pot of Greed's not, but it absolutely is.
All right, so moving away from that.
There's two. It's if you don't guess one, you discard 3 cards.
I guess
that's such a huge penalty.
I mean, sure.
And like a 60 card cap. It does have 10 stars, but that's why it can only be special summoned in this very specific way.
With a fairy type and a dragon
type.
A
light fairy and a light dragon.
You just got to build your deck around it.
Yeah.
So, you got these 3 cards, and then every other card you know is just going to be a duplicate of like these cards. You're going to get one.
Try your best.
Okay. So,
it's just like a 20 individual cards duplicated 3 times each.
So, the only other kind of element of Mott that's distinct is the fact that deities are often paired with feminine and masculine counterparts. And Mott was often paired with Thoth.
Yeah.
I'm going to say Tote because I listened to Crash Course Mythology years ago and they had a tote bag.
Yeah, it's Thoth for me because Smite.
And that's fair. So,
I thought it was Thoth for the longest time because they had Book of Thoth as an item.
Uh-huh.
And I'm like, oh, shit, okay. And then they bring Thoth in. And I'm like, oh, okay.
So due to this, she's sometimes interpreted as the wife of the god of wisdom and writing, which like is kind of underlines the importance these concepts had in the Egyptian idea of order.
Yep.
The idea that being wise and being able to communicate was part of the way things ought to be. Like civilization is the natural order of things.
Yeah.
Right? Which is like that fundamental, you almost be like, well, no, like buildings and stuff aren't natural. But the idea that like anything that prevents us from falling into primordial chaos is the idea that things ought to be. Anything that drives us away from that is part of Mott. And that's an interesting element to consider. I'm going to go on a tirade for just a second about Wikipedia. So the thing about Wikipedia is I do often use it because I think it's a really good compilation resource. And then I like to, when it says an interesting...
It's great for surface level.
It's great for surface level. And then I like to fall down the rabbit hole of the sources to see how good they are. So there was one thing that said that Thoth was said to have been the vizier who revels Mott and reckons Mott, who loves Mott and gives Mott to the doer of Mott, right? And this is the deep connection Thoth has to Mott as a goddess, Mott as a concept, Mott as the force of nature, Mott as a societal expectation.
Yes.
And I was like, where did it say that? And you click it, and it's the thing.
This motherfucker's book.
It brings you to know some dude's college dissertation.
Where did he find it?
And I think it came from the instruction of Amenemope, which is a record. It's like a 30-chapter thing that was essentially an instruction on how to live a good life, composed during the New Kingdom by the scribe Amenemope for his son. This is the thing we know exists. And I am pretty sure that the reason this passage is being linked to this dude's dissertation is because he cites it in here, because his dissertation, which I was only managed to be able to pull up the abstract for, because it wouldn't let me view the whole thing, no matter where I looked and how much I asked, because here's the thing, I almost reached out to one of our patrons who's like, ooh, I still have college access stuff. If you ever needed access to a journal, let me know. And I almost hit her up, but it was kind of the middle of the night. And I was in the thing where I just got to finish this and I can't. So I didn't forget your offer. I deeply appreciate it, B. You're the best. I just was kind of in chaos mode. And I'm like, I can't tap into that because I was so desperate just to figure out what is the context in this text in which this is being attributed to.
Yeah.
But this dude's whole thing was like, hey, there's not a good translation of this. And I think he also wanted to compare it to like Book of Proverbs because there's a lot of similarities in Book of Proverbs to this thing. So he's like, basically, based on his introduction, it's like, I'm not saying this is definitive. I'm just hoping this will be a good starting point.
Yeah.
And that's all I was allowed to look at. But I did find the passage in the text because in Google Books, it will let you like search for specific terms and show you just like 3 lines of where it appears. So I did find that passage. I did confirm it was about Thoth, but I couldn't get high enough past the quotation mark to see where it was from.
That's when you start like really backing up and just searching for the things that was before the text.
I did that. And it still just showed it cut off in the exact same way. I tried. I was like, tote of Heliopolis. And so I did that phrase and it just brought me to the exact same thing where that was,
Sad.
I know, I thought. So that's my little rant is like, great, but like, this isn't the thing. This is where someone else did it. But that's if it's from the introduction to instruction of M and Opé, then that is actually the thing that should be cited. But it's like, if this dude just, anyway. Sometimes
it only comes from like it's the beauty of open source, but it's also the downfall of open source, is that it comes from the
one
current editor's like experience. If they know that it's like, oh, it's from this dissertation, then I'll quote it from the dissertation.
Yeah.
And even though it's pulling from something else, I know it from the dissertation. And that's what I'm going to
cite, because this is the translation. This is the version of the translation of this thing. Because I even tried to find a translation of this text to see if this was in it, and I could not find a translation of it. Even the Wikipedia page was very short on it. Anyway, so this is why I wanted to mention both like James P. Allen's like Middle Kingdom, where I was like, what a wealth of crazy resource, because I was able to access the whole thing and like jump around. Anyway, so sometimes the little Wikipedia rabbit hole is a gold mine, and sometimes it's not even a puddle. It's like being in an aquarium and you just want the water, but you can't get to the water because there's this barrier. You see all the fish and you're like, it's exactly what I need, but I can't get to the fish because there's this barrier in my way. And it's called, you don't have access to your college email anymore. You can't have it. I'm like, please. I'll even rent it. I'll even give you money. I have a Patreon. Please, do you want?
Bro, please, bro.
Bro, please. I don't want to buy it. That's crazy. I'll give you $5 to rent it for an hour, though. Listen. And the other thing is, like, even if someone would let me have it, it's not like the money would go to the guy that wrote it, which is the other reason. I'm like, just let me see it.
Literally.
If I had enough time, I'd email him and be like, can I have a copy of this? I'll send you $15 if you just let me have a copy of this.
Can I get a copy of your dissertation on Egypt stuff?
I wrote that 10 years ago. I was like,
who are you?
I'm a pod. And it's funny because sometimes you go into like the academic ones that if you put in your like college email, it'll give you access to all the things. And they'll ask like, who are you? You're like a student or a former student. You're a professor. You're a retired. I always hit other podcaster just to fuck with their data. I'm not lying, but someone has to look at that. Circling back to what this episode is about. I just needed, listen, y'all. This was a good 15 minutes trying to access this thing.
Trying to figure it out.
And then finally I just said, okay, I'm 80% confident that this line is coming from this text and that's why it's being cited to this guy's dissertation. But I wanted to mention it because I'm not 100% confident. So if someone's like, that's not where it's from, that's okay. Call me out. Tell me where it's from. I had a whole time. So circling back to Mott is paired with totes. But in the concept of duality, you might be wondering, why wasn't Mott like paired with Esfet, right? Like, why didn't we see more of like this balanced duality of them?
Well, because we don't want Mott to be with Esfet.
That's true. It's a bad ship. And if you ship Mott with Esfet,
that's toxic,
you are supporting actual abuse. No, fuck.
That's toxic. Don't stop.
I can't believe you would do that. Ugh, shipping culture has gone too far. No, I don't care about any of that. God, I saw a great tweet that was like reflecting on a mutual when you were 15 years old. It's like, if you ship Lapis and Jasper, then you're an awful person who supports abuse.
Here's my take. And I saw a Facebook memory come up recently.
Oh, God.
Way before we even had Jailbreaker or like anything. The episode, like a couple episodes after the episode where we saw Lapis and Peridot together, I was like kind of shipping them almost immediately.
Yeah.
I like the color combination a lot. I saw fan art of it too. I'm like, oh damn, that's actually kind of nice.
Sometimes fan art is all it takes.
I know, it was just the two standing on the beach, and she still had like her lemon enhancers and shit. And so I'm like, yeah.
Listen, sometimes
like this is great. And then anyway, I think I shared it around, and everyone's like, "You're fucking crazy. You're insane." I'm like, "What are you talking about?"
No,
this shit,
right
like it's the color combination, and then like it goes, and that's where it ends up, and you're like, I can glean it. I read it in mine, dude. I saw it.
Anyway, the second half of the tweet was my mutual at 25. Been getting real into peanut butter chips recently. And I think that's the span of growing up with access to the internet.
There you go.
I can definitely not pretend like I wasn't like that. And now I'm like, y'all watch K-pop Demon Hunters?
Yeah.
Slaps, gang. Anyway,
There you go.
know any good keto recipes? I'm not going keto. I'm just trying to reduce my carb intake at dinner time.
Yeah.
For my glucose levels. Anyway, so the real reason that we don't have a Mott paired with Isfet is because he doesn't have a physical
I was
form.
actually about to ask if we even have like a physical representation of this
No,
dude.
he doesn't
No,
have
it's
a physical...
it's the human race. That's the physical representation of Isfet.
Oh, that's so fun. He's often kind of, if anything, he's more interpreted as being an aspect of Apophis.
Uh-huh. Makes sense.
But we'll talk about that later. That's what I got for Order and Chaos for you, gang.
Kind of bummed out we didn't see Mott in the books.
Right?
We're not even mentioned as the fact that she had a personification from Thoth, her husband. Didn't even know Thoth was married. Didn't even bring it up.
Yeah, listen, but it's one of those things where, like, it's not all the time, right? And I mean, at a glance, sometimes Thoth has, like, other wives and stuff like that, and it's a thing that depends. It would have been interesting. Shout out to Seaweed Brain, who's like, nah, Tote and Bast are exes. Like, that's why Tote's fucking with her. He's just putting his ex-wife on blast. I love that take. I don't, like, personally see that, but I love that. I think it's so funny.
I think he just likes fucking with her.
I think he just likes fucking with her. It's like
that's
Hermes
it.
and Cersei.
Yeah.
They're just like fucking with him. That's what I got. Right. It would have been cool. We don't see Mott, right? Mott is mentioned as a concept worth
Yeah, Mott's just simply mentioned as the concept,
Yeah.
but never as a goddess.
It would have been. And doesn't towards the end, like, Sadie uses like the rune, like, not the rune, God, the hieroglyph of Mott to, like, keep everything from falling apart. Would have been, but I guess they don't channel multiple deities, right? They have, like, the one that they're paired with. But it would have been cool.
Would have been neat. It would have been neat to, like, reference the fact that she had a personification.
Yeah, since the Old Kingdom, this wasn't like something they tacked on during like the
and it's not like
Ptolemaic eras.
Here's the thing: you search Mott Egypt, it comes up with the personification, like as the picture.
Books. I've got this book that I found. This is going to be this season's Emily Wilson's mythology, or no, that's Emily Wilson's, the translator of the Odyssey, Edith Hamilton's mythology.
Mm-hmm.
It's the Complete Gods and Goddesses of Ancient Egypt by Richard H. Wilkinson. I was looking up online good resources for ancient Egyptian like mythology. This came up as a good one, and I found it used at Half Price Books.
Nice.
I was very excited. I think I got it for $12. Anyway,
Nice.
Mott is on the cover.
Yeah, it's literally. She's there.
She's there. She's got the wings and also the
feather.
Ostrich feather.
Yeah.
Like, she's on
Like,
the
she's there.
cover.
She's like you can't avoid her.
So
what the heck, Rick?
Yeah, it is odd that we didn't like meet her as a character.
Look, Rick, I'm gonna be real with you. This might be your weakest series.
Oh, interesting.
I like Heroes.
You know a lot of because you like. I was about to say a lot
because
of
I like Heroes. Everybody fucking hates it. I love it. Okay.
Listen,
I'm not saying it's bad.
it's just maybe the weakest.
It's
I
maybe the
think the
weakest.
thing about Kane Chronicles for me is I think there were a lot of concepts that I would have liked to dig deeper on. Whereas Heroes, I think he has a lot of ideas that he straight up abandons or changes to something that I feel like is less good than the
Heroes
original
is a
suggestion.
little cluttered.
Heroes is very cluttered.
Heroes is a little cluttered.
Kane Chronicles is perhaps a bit sparse.
I think Kane Chronicles is a mile wide, an inch deep.
But there are some places, not the whole thing. I think there are some... Listen, the idea that the gods have all these crazy different relationship types is because...
Yeah, but then they don't
but then he
explore
doesn't
it.
explore it. You're
That's
right.
the problem.
It's a mile
If they
wide and
explored
an
it, it's a
inch
mile
deep.
wide and an inch deep.
No,
It's
you're
a
right.
it's
No,
a
you're
cool
right.
fucking concept, but
You're
there's
absolutely
nothing.
We're gonna bring it
He
up every
doesn't
episode.
do anything
This
with
is the
it.
thing we're most mad about this season. We've mentioned it in every
Episode, but it's like
No.
because it would have been so cool.
would've been so
It would have
cool.
been so cool for Isis and Horus to be brother and sister.
Yeah.
For like, Osiris to still be their dad, right? And Isis now having a fucking human mom.
Yeah, and also just having a lot of like affection for Ruby Kane.
Horus and Nephthys getting together. They'd be a
Yeah.
thing.
Oh, that'd be cute.
But then it's Ra
It's also
because
Ra.
we changed that.
That was weird. Yeah.
He introduces a lot of, I think, really cool concepts, but he doesn't explore them.
And that's the thing I think we see a lot in a lot of his. It's not just Kane Chronicles.
Yeah.
I think we find Rick coming up with
Neat
cool
things.
concepts that don't get the time and attention or the development
Yeah.
to reach that part. Also flip side, that's just not what he wanted to do. Like we mentioned it a couple times.
Yeah,
we
he
think that
didn't
would have
want
been
to do
really
it.
cool.
I understand.
And
it,
there's
but
also a thing that it's okay for a creator to be like, I didn't want to do that. Like that's not the direction I wanted to
it's
take my narrative.
fine
And that's
that
fine.
You didn't
Like
want to do that.
I don't think
I'm gonna harp on it regardless.
I think it's a really cool idea. I think it would have been super fun and would have added a very interesting take to the dynamic of these characters.
If honestly,
but I don't think the book is less than for not going this way that we would have liked. But it does. But I think the problem is we just come up against them saying that we changed the way we are because we embody humans and not
doing it this time.
And that's the actual thing.
They lay it out and then they don't do it this time. Why not?
Or it's like actually you have a preset way that you are.
Yeah, you could have just
done that. And when you're not embodying a human, you just are this way all the time.
You could have just done that. It's like us as gods, this is our relationship as gods. But when we embody humans, we take on those relationships. But once we leave those bodies again, we get back to our god relationships.
Which I think is what it is, because that's what happens.
Yeah, but they need to explain that instead of just being like, oh, our relationships change every now and again.
Yeah, the reason there are different gods is because they were...
But no, Horus is still Osiris' son.
Yeah.
So they do... It's dumb. It's not...
You're right, because sometimes they're all born from Geb and Nut, and sometimes they are...
Yeah, Osiris is born from...
Okay, Isis. We move past it. We move on. Yeah. We move on. This is the end of the episode.
I was about to say a Set. That's her name in Smite right now.
Who?
Isis.
Isis?
Yeah, they changed it during the whole Isis terror thing.
You know what? You kind of have to. You can't let your SEO change that way, right? Okay, so that is what I have. It's not a lot.
Yeah.
But the other problem is like these concepts, sometimes we get up to this thing that's so fundamental, it's unspoken. So there's not a lot. And I feel like that's like how Hestia doesn't have a lot of myths about her doing stuff.
Yeah.
You don't want Mott running around and being involved in shenanigans because
she's doing her thing already.
Because she is the natural way of things ought to be like this. She's not like Home and Hearth isn't going to run around causing mischief. That's not what you want to see. Mott isn't going to run around. But also, like, I'm not really sure how many different tales there are. Like, I'm not sure. The thing about Greek mythology that I think is actually probably very distinct is the fact that we have so many myths because they like to write.
These motherfuckers liked to write.
These were what their stories were about.
Yeah.
And I'm not necessarily sure that's the same. Like
with
we talked
Egypt, it does seem like it's more along the lines of a lot of the stories are just truthfully creation myths, like just explaining why things are the way they are.
Yeah.
Instead of having, a hero story. Right?
Flip side, though, 5,000 years of Egyptian history.
Oh, there's probably a couple things that did
probably stuff that was only in oral traditions.
I don't know when papyrus was really made a thing for Egypt. Mm-hmm. But stone tablets do not last in sandstorms.
They don't. And so you only have the ones that lasted when they were buried inside a temple and safe.
Yeah.
So, and you don't, the things that get saved are the things that get carved into stone, these fundamental creation myths, these fundamental truths about their world is what you save. But the stories that we just told to entertain,
it's a lot of work carving shit into stone.
Yeah, those weren't carved into walls. They were just told around the fire. They were told at dinner. They were told at celebrations. So we don't have that.
The advent of easy writing was so nice.
God, script is so important.
Insane, dude. Yeah. Oh my God.
Gosh, listen, hieroglyphs are gorgeous, but script is so important.
Recently watched a little video as to like how why some languages look so like crazy when written down, and it's because of the types of paper that they had that they had to like adapt to it. Like a lot of Eastern like Southeastern Asian ones have like crazy turns or loops because they were writing in like leaves and shit, and they could only kind of get that kind of or
love that.
A lot of them were a lot might have been like straight because they could only get straight lines in the kind of paper that they were doing.
That's so interesting. Listen, human communication is fucking fascinating, and I love this about us. We're so great at it.
Mm-hmm.
Of all the things,
we figure it out, dude. We'll figure it out.
Crushed communication.
Yeah,
love that
Nailed
for
it.
us. Aw, Robert just texted me all caps. You're a very good friend, and I miss you.
Nice.
Hey, I'm gonna leave this in the episode. Hey, everybody. Robert of the Damn Meme Page is a very good friend, and I miss them, and they're awesome. And I'm leaving this in. And Robert, you should make a meme about how awesome and how we love you.
Fantastic
well, DJ
thought.
is fond of you. I
Yes.
love you. DJ doesn't know you like that.
I think you are a good person.
Yay! Okay. That's the episode. I'm leaving all of that in because otherwise this episode's going to be very short because there's not a lot. But again, fundamental concepts. We don't have a lot of like elaborate stuff about them.
Yeah.
But I do hope that this serves as a point we can revisit, especially as we get into like the Horus and Ra stories.
Aside from Apophis, what is there like another like distinctly, truthfully chaos god? Esfet god?
I think Set, but also as I was trying to figure out where we were going with this episode, I did encounter some stuff about Set that indicates that perhaps for a long time
It's quite literally supposed to be this way.
Well, perhaps
supposed
he
to be order.
wasn't always such a bad force or wasn't interpreted as such being as bad force. We will get to that in the Set episode. But by and large, like it does seem like Apophis is this fundamental, like the Apophis, because it seems, again, we'll get into this for the Apophis episode because Apophis is going to get his own episode. This concept of chaos, the destruction, the erasure of Mott, I think is what Apophis represents. And so you don't have a lot of other chaos gods. I think essentially every other god is order because every other god is a personification of a natural aspect of their world and thus a part of the way things ought to be. So if Apophis is primordial chaos, Set is Esfet, the decision and choice to be in disharmony.
Neat.
And I think that's also, I think, a really good and important distinction of why, and also the idea that like order will all, and a good distinction, I think a good underline when we say like, oh, good versus evil. Good will triumph over evil because we believe that is like a moral rightness of the world. And we teach that in stories to encourage, like, this is why you be good because it will win out over evil. It gives us hope, right? And Mott will triumph over Isfet isn't quite the same as good versus evil because it's not, if you just hold on to hope and we keep fighting, we'll eventually overcome. It's like, no, oil floats on top of water.
Yeah.
It just does. Order will triumph over Isfet. It just will.
Yeah.
There is no question about it. It is going to. But perhaps that does kind of lean into the idea of like if Isfet is a choice that humans make, then the idea that they choose not to make it is why Mott will ultimately triumph. And maybe that does kind of go into a good versus evil in the sense of like morality and hope. And it is a fundamental way of we are supposed to function this way because it makes things better.
Yeah. In
the long run, to choose harmony, truthfulness, and balance when interacting with each other. Okay, that's it. I'm done.
That was wonderful.
Thank you.
I got no other questions right now.
Cool. Do you have any other Order v Chaos? You want to talk about Discord for My Little Pony for a second?
Sure.
Yeah, of all presentations of Chaos.
He's fun.
He's fun.
He's a good time.
He's just Q from Star Trek Next Generation.
Isn't he the actor too?
Yeah, it's John Delancey. They cast him specifically because this was supposed to be like a Q homage.
Yeah.
And that's also probably
I
why
think
Discord got
became
a
a fan
redemption.
favorite and came back over.
He got a redemption
and over
arc. I like Discord.
Discord was fun. I like him a lot.
Wacky design. I think he's
a
fun, neat character.
I just remembered that Smite's 2 teams are actually called Chaos and Order.
Hey!
Yeah, they have their own like aesthetic. Chaos is like white, blue, gold. Or not Chaos. Order is like white, blue, gold. And Chaos is just volcanic.
Hey, nice. Like red and black.
I'll just show you the Titans for them. So the Chaos Titan is like, red and black wielding 2 big fucking clubs or axe or whatever.
That's really cool.
Yeah. Let's see if I can get the Order Titan here. Oh, yeah. And the Order Titan are like 2 twin goddesses wielding a big fucking spear.
I like them.
Yeah.
I like that there's 2 of them, like Order, and they're holding hands, like working in harmony.
Yeah.
I like that. Oh, that's very good.
Yeah. It used to be more kind of like vaguely Greek versus, I would say, a fiery Nordic.
Okay.
That's kind of how the aesthetics used to be, but it's evolved since then. But
it occurred to me that I do have another one for Order v Chaos, and that is Warhammer.
Hey,
The concept of specifically Warhammer AOS, not a 40K podcast. It is the chaos gods are going to come and they're going to just ruin everything because that's what they do. They want to destroy all of existence. They are essentially primordial chaos and they want to bring everything that exists into it by encouraging people to commit esphet by like falling into whatever vice or overindulgence that the four chaos gods represent. So when you're playing in like Warhammer and you're in a game, you are choosing between like order or chaos and then some like sub like the undead and things like that. I don't know. I'm not allowed to learn more about it. I have to be
wait for the episode.
I have to wait for the episodes just like y'all. But if you don't know, I also do a podcast about Warhammer Age of Sigmar. It's called The Bad Moon's Orbit. My buddy tells me all about the lore.
Yeah.
So the so you're either order, and that doesn't necessarily mean you're a good guy. You could be a straight up monster and still be on the side of order because you don't want the chaos demons to unravel all of existence again. Yeah. And I think that's fascinating that order doesn't necessarily mean good.
Yeah.
You can be on the side of not letting the chaos demons win and still be the worst. Flip side, chaos does mean bad because even if you're indulging in chaos for good reasons.
You're unraveling the universe.
Yeah. Even if you go on the side of chaos for like initially good reasons, like let's say you're a guy and you want to protect your warrior and you want to protect your home from invading forces that are going to kill everybody. So you go to this top of this mountain and you take the energy of a god. And you listen, also think about the chaos demons is they don't usually say up front that they're a chaos demon. They like pretend to be something else before, and then it's too late to get out. So maybe you decide I'm going to take on the power of Korn, this like war and violence demon, because I want the power
the band, like with a big slappy bass.
I think Korn has an H in it.
Oh, well,
I think the demon Korn. Listen, blood for the blood god, skull for the skull throne. And you use that power to protect your people. And that's great. But eventually you stop caring about why you're fighting and you only care about violence. And that is the inevitability of
So the
chaos.
anime I was actually just watching did have like a sad backstory TM for a character that was almost like that.
Yeah?
They were just like fighting in an army, like with their king and everything, and they were fighting a good fight, just being like, relatively fine, whatever. And the king gave all of his like most trusted generals spears, and the spears slowly corrupted them to where they didn't even recognize that they were being so violent. They just didn't differentiate from friend or foe and just lived for a bloodbath.
Yes, exactly that. You just live for that. So that's the thing about chaos is it doesn't, like when I say you can be on the side of order and not be a good guy, if you're on the side of chaos, you are inevitably going to become a monster. That's just what happens.
That's just what happens. Chaos unravels your brain.
If you're really lucky, you become like a demon prince of chaos, and that is the best case scenario for you. And you're the most monster. More likely, you're just going to become a terrible slug monster thing that they unravel for funsies. It's not a good time. But yeah, hey, you should go listen to Bad Moon's Orbit if you want. I'll link it below.
Thank you so much for joining us.
I almost shouted out our God to level patrons, but that's not what we do here.
No, it's not.
I tell you when we're gonna be back. I haven't committed to a set schedule of this is the order of things. We started to order, and that feels pretty good. So I'm not really sure what's next. It might be Raw and Apophis. It might just be Raw. I kind of feel like we got to do Osiris. Maybe I should just do the order of things. Sorry, y'all. It's probably getting annoying to hear me talk about this, but I'll figure it out. But either way, we're going to be back in your ears on Tuesday, July 15th. Shout out our brother's birthday. Not DJ.
Not me. Older brother. Younger brother for her.
Yeah.
It's all younger brother for her, but
they're all younger brothers to me. I am the oldest of all siblings. But we'll be back on July 15th to talk about something related to Norse mythology. I'm tired.
Norse mythology.
Shut up.
We're back, baby.
Hey, we're swinging back around. We'll be back on July 15th to talk about something related to Egyptian mythology. I don't know. I haven't figured it out yet.
Thank you guys so much for joining us.
And until next time, don't be like Zeus.
Don't be like Zeus.
Muses of Mythology is created and hosted by Darien and DJ Smartt. It's edited by Darien Smartt. The show is produced by Darien and DJ Smartt, as well as
Tim O'Connor, The Crystal Conman, Nicholas Miller, Jeffrey Babbitt. Our music is Athens Festival by Martin Hain.
And our cover is by Ran Kapoka. You can find them on Instagram or through the link in our show notes. Want more Muses of Mythology? Support the show on Patreon. Join the Patreon for free for access to outtakes and bloopers from our main feed episodes, or for $5 a month, You can enjoy our Bunker 9 bonus episodes every other week. Get more at patreon.com/Muses of Mythology.
You can also support the show by leaving a review at lovethepodcast.com/Muses of Mythology, or tell a friend why you love the show.
Don't forget to check out all of our episodes and episode transcripts at musesofmythology.com.
Thanks for listening.